So let's talk about the Nvidia 50 series fake frames controversy. On Monday, January 6th, Nvidia revealed their 50 series RTX GPUs. We have a whole video on the keynote if you haven't seen it yet, and that includes a hands-on gaming on the new RTX 5090. During that keynote, Nvidia stated that the RTX 5070, which is launching with a $550 price tag, will deliver RTX 4090 performance, followed quickly by Jensen Huang saying, "This would be impossible without AI." So, coming back to our intro, that's what I referred to as a red flag, because that tells us explicitly that this is going to be done with DLSS,
software,
with FrameGen.
Yeah.
Well, hardware. It's using inferencing hardware.
Sure.
But also software.
Yeah.
Initially, many people were excited, but then as the news kind of settled and more people started talking about it, it's sort of shifted to a perception that these are fake frames, since the way that these 50 series cards are going to be able to achieve such great performance is through DLSS 4.0 with FrameGen, and in particular, a new type of FrameGen that is, well, has a lot more fake frames than the old FrameGen.
Yeah.
So the example that most people are referencing is actually on NVIDIA's own website, where they show Cyberpunk 2077 running at 4K with all settings cranked to the max, only getting 28 FPS without DLSS, and then over 230 frames with DLSS multi-frame gen, ray reconstruction, and super resolution. So basically, rendering at a lower initial resolution, generating, 3 frames of artificially 3 inferred frames for every 1 actual rendered out frame.
Correct.
And then ray reconstruction, I am not 100% familiarized with yet, so I'm not going to try to explain that one. Another reason people are upset over fake frames is that benchmarks in the future are going to get really confusing.
Oh, yeah.
For people who take these numbers at face value versus the actual visuals that you might be seeing, because 250 frames per second rendered fully, right, with no fake frames, is going to look different and feel different than 250 frames per second with a whole bunch of software trickery.
To be clear about multi-frame gen too, you can have multi-frame gen on, but at different levels. So I believe this is multi-frame gen 4X, which is like as aggro as it can go.
Right. So that's 3 fake frames for every one.
But you could have multi-frame gen that is below that. That's the main thing I'm trying to.
Yeah. So FrameGen in the past has just been like every other. So it's been a 1-to-1 ratio, whereas now you can have a 1-to-1, a 2-to-1, or a 3-to-1 ratio of generated frames versus fully rendered out frames.
And one thing that they're talking about is like paying attention to your monitor's refresh rate and trying to set FrameGen so that the FPS count is just a bit above your monitor's refresh rate. They're not suggesting that you just crank it to 4X all the time. Because I think even they're recognizing that it's like,
so
not perfect.
We're going to have to be a little careful with this discussion question, because I have not been briefed on anything about 50 series, but I cannot necessarily say that about everyone in the room right now.
That I was told outside of the thing.
Okay.
So I was okay with saying that.
Cool. But we still do have a discussion question. We're just going to have to be a little bit careful with it. After having spent time with graphics cards throughout the years, do you agree with the mindset that these are fake frames and they don't count for the performance of the card? Initial thoughts?
No.
Okay.
Not completely.
Okay. That sounds like a more... Are you able to elaborate any more right now?
What can I say and what can I not say? So this is something that they've said before. This wasn't just said at the thing. So Nvidia claims that 80% of RTX gamers turn on DLSS. Now, I tried to get an extrapolation from there because something that I didn't get one, so I can talk about. Well, I did, but they said maybe, and they weren't 100% sure, so I'm not going to quote it.
Sure.
But what I was kind of trying to figure out is like, okay, RTX gamers. So this goes back to 2000 series, right? So like if someone's running a 2050 Ti or a 2060,
I don't think there's a 2050
Is
Ti.
there?
You can tell he was out of the game for a period there.
I didn't care at all.
2060 is the entry level to RTX.
Sure. So a 2060.
Yep.
Is that person way more likely to turn on DLSS versus like a 4090?
I would.
Like, what's the distribution here?
That's an interesting question. If I had a 4090 or I had a 5090, which it has been announced, the pricing's here. I was prepared for $2,000 US. I'm buying one. So when I install my 5090, I will probably not turn it on. If I had a 3060,
I heard a quote from you off camera. Can I say it?
I don't remember what it is, but go for it.
Okay. You said, I'm not buying a $2,000 GPU to turn on DLSS.
Yeah, you could quote me. You could quote me on that.
All right.
But the thing is that I'm going to have to make compromises somewhere else. Then.
I think that's honestly, and this is where I said like the maybe thing, because I think that approach is not optimal.
And that's fair enough.
I think so.
That's fair enough because I think there is validity. I think there is validity to because I'm going to make compromises in order to get the kind of frame rate that I want. I'm going to have to turn off some visual details then. Whereas if someone else says, "Hey, look, I want to see all the eye candy," and I don't need, whether it's you're trading off a competitive edge for visuals or you're trading off,
really depends
cooler
on the
looking lighting and smoke and particle effects for, sharpness in the rendered image, whatever, right? Whatever it is that's your trade-off, that's your trade-off. And I don't think that one is right, absolutely.
Yes.
And one is wrong, absolutely.
Yeah.
But in terms of my feelings about it, yeah, I'm not going to buy a $2,000 graphics card and turn on frame gen.
Which I think is fair. And I think you're more visually discerning than the vast majority of people I've ever met.
I have seen the faces fall of NVIDIA employees now through numbered, like more than one generation.
And I'm not just trying to gas them up. Like this is a thing.
Of DLSS. I have watched them
think it's like basically perfect. Be confident.
Watch me walk up to a demo. Literally, it wasn't this launch. It was 4000 series super launch. They had two demo systems right next to each other. One that was using DLSS and one that wasn't. And I believe it was with frame gen. And they didn't have like FPS counters. And they were like, "Can you tell which one?" And immediately I was like, "This one." And they're like, "How did you know?" And I'm like, because it's my job.
Yeah.
It is literally my job to be able to tell the difference between this stuff for a living. With that said, it can be my job to know that stuff, and I can still recognize that my brother-in-law isn't going to be able to tell and isn't going to care and would actually probably prefer the smoother experience.
Yeah. And like...
but that's not me.
Zenith in chat said latency is what matters most. And it's like, no, not necessarily. Not always.
And...
I mean, for you...
And
for in the games that you play,
there was something I really liked too. Nameless Ted in the float plane chat says all frames are fake. Raster is fake. AI generated is fake.
Shaders.
And this is a really, really good point that I feel like some people are missing. This is the forest that I feel like some people are missing through the trees here. And I want to bring us back to a video that we did a couple of years ago called "I'm Embarrassed I Didn't Think of This: Asynchronous Reprojection." This blew my absolute fucking mind. You want to talk about fake frames? This blew me away because as someone who had kind of fallen out of paying attention to VR that closely, it wasn't something that I was familiar with up until we made this video. So this was a demo that trying to remember what the guy, Comrade Stinger and 2-Click Phillip, okay? Or 2-Clicks Phillip. These guys made a couple of little videos, future upscaling async reprojection outside of VR, and we basically got our hands on their demos and showed how what it looks like when you're rendering this at without it. Okay, hold on. Or wait, is this with it? This looks bad. Can it be improved? Hold on. Okay, so basically what it is it's a way of, okay, here we go. Here we've got it on. So this is basically using a whole bunch of data from the previous frame to kind of to fill in. And I'm really hazy on the details now because it was 2 years ago we made that video, and I basically learned all about it for that video. And then because I'm not a game developer and I don't work on graphics drivers and GPU architecture, I unlearned it because I don't need it until I need it again. But the long story short is that basically it only bothers, it will just keep displaying old data, and then anytime you move and reveal something that was occluded, it will bother to render that, and that will be done at your true frame rate, but your inputs are at whatever elevated frame rate you just decide, because it's just reusing it at whatever maximum refresh rate your monitor can run at. And it feels great. And you can actually watch people. In the video, we've got people doing blind frame rate tests. Okay, to me, this feels like 60. Do you think anything changed? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, this is 60. So these are, we specifically picked like gamers from the team. Yep, can very much tell. Okay. And then we're going to turn it up. Hold on, where do we turn it up? Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Okay. Oh, come on, man. Whatever. The point is it's really cool. I'm sorry this was a lame finish to this conversation.
That's okay.
And what I'm trying to say is one of the biggest issues with running at a lower frame rate, and one of the biggest issues with DLSS and frame gen, is latency. And async reprojection is a way that you can have a very fake frame, like literally just reused visual data from the previous frame that feels very low latency, and unless you're moving in specific ways, is very hard to discern, even for, real gamers.
And I can't talk too much about the tech stuff, but I mean, it's been pretty obvious for a long time from all camps, right? From Intel's camp, AMD's camp, Nvidia's camp, that this is the direction that things are going in. Nvidia has that quote that 80% of RTX gamers are turning DLSS on, which is probably an absurd number.
I mean, Nvidia definitely.
I'm wondering where they pulled that from. Are they getting that information from game devs? Are they getting that information from
I would assume
GeForce Experience or
GeForce Experience,
whatever it's called now, Nvidia app?
Not GeForce Now, yeah, GeForce Experience.
I think it's Nvidia app now.
Sure,
whatever. Are they? Is that like? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the lines are necessarily drawn there, but that's a really high percentage of people.
Yep. I mean, games are enabling it by default. So like.
Yep.
Most people, and that's the thing that the enthusiast community doesn't realize,
yes,
is most people literally are not going to touch the game settings panel.
Yeah.
There's a reason they suck.
So if it's on by default,
it's because only some nerd is going to go in there and change anything. And I get it. Man, I forget who I was having this conversation with recently about how they were blown away at how little, like, someone in their life cared about these details. Like,
sure.
Think about, I mean, it's the classic, like...
I'm sure there is an example of that for that person.
Every Thanksgiving, right? Every Thanksgiving, there's the annual reminder to, when you visit your relatives, turn off the stupid motion smoothing, because most people literally don't even open a settings menu. Like, my grandparents don't even know where it is. They don't know how to access it on their TV.
But that being said, 80% of gamers turn on DLSS. They don't necessarily turn on DLSS all the time.
Sure.
And this is where I keep coming back to the right tool for the right job thing, where like I think there's games and I think there's scenarios where you're not going to want any form of, you don't want DLSS, you don't want frame gen, you don't want any of this stuff.
I'm playing like a competitive game, absolutely.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely. I don't want...
But then looking at one of the experiences...
Okay.
I think I can talk about it, but I'm not certain, so I'm just going to not.
Yeah, that's fine.
Looking at one of the experiences with it completely off versus with it completely on, like, this is where communicating about this stuff gets really funky, though, because I don't even think that's a fair comparison. You can't do like the hardest possible settings and then turn on DLSS and 4x frame gen and just put them side by side and be like, this is fair. I don't think that's true.
No,
I think you should go
fair.
for like more of a frame rate target or something.
Yep.
And without those tools, put on the best settings you can while hitting that frame rate
and then
target.
say, hey, does this look okay to you?
Yeah.
Because for me, a lot of the time, I mean, we did this video a while back on ultra settings are kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the time, for that extra 3% more realism, it is costing you
so much,
double the GPU horsepower. And that's a way that, you know, for my part, medium to high in a lot of modern games,
almost always great.
I can't really tell. And a big part of the reason for that is that game developers are explicitly, like, it's not like they hide this. They're explicitly optimizing their games for whatever the current generation console is.
Sure.
And the current generation console at the very, very, very highest end is a PS5 Pro, which is equivalent to what? Like a 7800 XT or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah.
Which is a very powerful GPU, right? It's a marvel of modern engineering. But what it isn't is a 4090 or a 5090.
Yeah.
Right?
So ultimately, I think just dismissing this tech is the wrong take. I also think that saying that a 5070 is a 4090 is just like clearly, obviously.
Yes.
Like these things can both be true.
Both of those things are true.
I don't think that we should look at frame gen and be like, this is stupid and dumb and we should all ignore this collectively. Because no, I think it is cool and it has applications. It's really, honestly, the tech that they're talking about that I can't really talk about right now, damn, super impressive.
Okay.
But it kind of feels like a DLC more than a new graphics card launch. Still super cool.
Yeah.
5090 is a wicked card, but like it's $2,000. That's a lot.
I've got a couple of people kind of asking me, okay, Linus, now that you're outside of the NVIDIA room, right? What can you say about the latency?
I don't think you hold back
of the frame. I didn't hold anything back. Dude, you gotta, okay.
I don't think them being there literally mattered at all.
This is something that a lot of people, I feel like, don't understand about this early access. Like, I saw a number of comments about this on the AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus video that I did in ASUS's booth with that Z13 gaming tablet. Yeah. Is like, people are like scam. This isn't even a good review, and like, you know, some other publication would have done a better review. Guys, this is not a review. These products aren't out. The performance embargo is not lifted. The fact that we were able to game on these at all is a f***ing miracle. And I'm extremely grateful for it.
Yes.
Because it gives us a little bit more information than just a spec sheet.
They were honestly,
that was the alternate.
Surprisingly open this time.
Yeah.
Like I have quite openly dogged on Nvidia and a lot of other companies for their events in the past. This one in general was very good.
Yeah.
They were super open. They were open conversations. They seemed, there's the RTX 5070 is 4090 performance thing, which is in the keynote and whatever. But once we got past that, they were super honest, super open.
Yep.
It felt like good conversations.
Yep. And the fact that I was able to install my own game of my choice.
Yeah, crazy.
They were like, realistically, the only reason that we only ran one game was because the internet connectivity was pretty bad.
Yeah, which is not their fault.
ASUS actually owes MSI a solid for us having that game at all, because I had to send Dylan from the procurement team on a quest to go copy game files to an SSD because ASUS was not set up to run any games on it. We got special permission to run Black Myth Wukong. And it's amazing how people will like make these conspiracy theories. Like, Linus is only in the opening scene because it's easier to run. No, I just haven't played the game.
Yeah.
And someone else was using the LTT benchmark account, and I didn't want to kick them off. So I bought the game on my account there in the booth, and I fired up the fucking game. That's it. Calm the fuck down, you know? Like, people are looking so hard for a conspiracy, but what's actually happening is, and I even laid this out, like coming back to the NVIDIA booth demo, because we're going to talk about Ryzen AI Max Plus later. Yeah. So coming back to the NVIDIA demo that I did, people are looking so hard for like a conspiracy, but I laid it all out. I'm not allowed to change the resolution, even being allowed to show you guys the settings.
Wild.
unbelievable.
I'm very surprised they let you do that.
Considering
super cool.
Considering how high level the keynote was.
Yes.
The fact that I was able to show you guys the settings we were running at is the only reason you're even able to have these conversations about how NVIDIA cherry-picked the settings, because otherwise you wouldn't have even known. Don't ruin this for next time.
I used
Recognize
to talk about
the gift.
I used to talk about this with Blizzard all the time, but be careful about what the impact of what you're doing is going to cause. Like this is the first time in a really long time that they've been really open and allowed this level of access to things.
Yeah.
Don't close that off.
Yeah. Yeah, don't screw this up, guys.
Be angry about the right stuff. There's things to be angry about.
Yeah, 100%.
Just be angry about the right stuff.
The 5070 is equal to a 4090 whatever thing. Yeah. Yeah, say, hey, that's misleading.
Yeah.
Say that's misleading. Say you don't agree. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But don't be like, yeah, NVIDIA should have let you do a full performance review.
So obviously not.
Obviously not, you guys. There's still media briefings that need to be done. Everybody needs time to test and benchmark these things in their own labs.
And I really appreciate that they did this huge thing with us that I can't really talk about because they brought a huge amount of reviewers there. And it was a discussion about like looking into this, this technology, but they're also really open about like, how do you test this stuff? Because this generation, more than, I haven't been in the game for a long time, so maybe this is a false statement, but it feels true to me. More than many previous is going to be really weird to test. And we always say this, but like, look at multiple reviews. This time more than like any. Because there's going to be a lot of weird stuff. Like we're going back to like many generations in the past where we're talking about image quality differences between graphics card brands. We're going to have to be pixel peeping things. Like the DLSS quality in different games is going to be up and down depending on different variables. Like this is going to be very, very weird.
In some ways, what's happening now is such a time is a flat circle moment, because there was only a really, in the grand scheme of things, small window where everyone was expected to render the game the same way.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Because before that, it was everything from, driver cheats and anti-aliasing shortcuts. And and then you go back even further and everyone's using like completely different APIs even. You've got like Glide and stuff like that. And then after that, you've got vendor proprietary implementations of things like Hairworks or whatever else.
Yeah.
Like this expectation we have that everyone will render it exactly the same way is actually in some ways a
little blip in time.
False expectation.
Yeah.
It never existed before that. And I got to be honest with you guys, like it or don't like it, that's totally valid, but it's never happening again.
Yeah.
It's completely over.
Yeah. I do agree. I also want to jump in. Nick from the labs commented saying, I did not walk away from a conversation with NVIDIA without a decent answer to a question. And honestly, I completely agree.
Yep.
The event that they held while we were there, not the keynote, the event after that with reviewers was fantastic.
I'll say this. NVIDIA, the more dominant they've gotten, in some ways, the more arrogant they've gotten.
Oh, yeah.
And the more controlling they've gotten. But the more open in some other ways they have also gotten.
I don't know that those things are... I understand they're correlated.
I don't think there's causation.
Yeah.
I'm just saying their dominance is correlated to both of those other things.
Yeah. I think there's other reasons why. I don't know if we want to get into those.
Like
but
things like PCAT, so their power monitoring tools. Things like FCAT, their frame time monitoring tools.
Fantastic.
That obviously they would have had as internal tools before, but releasing those to reviewers is such a just like slapping your gigantic dong on the table move, going, we want to enable reviewers to better test this stuff because we know that if they test it properly, we are not only so much better today, but we are going to be so much better forever that we want everyone to have better tools to know it.
There's so many things I want to say right now.
That is such a dong slonking on the table move.
Totally
like
is.
It's crazy. And who else in the history of anything has ever done that? Can you imagine BMW being like, our cars are so much more efficient and so much faster than anyone else's.
We need to teach you how to measure.
And they will be until the end of time, that we are literally going to develop a better dyno, and we're literally going to equip the entire reviewosphere with particulate matter testing equipment so that you can hold us accountable in the future if we ever fall off this podium that we sit atop. Like, imagine that. Nobody does that. That's crazy. Nobody does that. Except Nvidia. However, I've spoken at length on this show about the way that Nvidia also withholds information, treats partners like non-partners, obfuscates. I think, and I told them this to their face. I stopped by the event. I wasn't able to attend it because I was busy covering the rest of the show. But I told them I think they've lost some of their fun over the years. Like, Nvidia used to be able to laugh at themselves in a way that I feel like they've kind of lost. And I hope that they take the feedback for what it is, genuine feedback, not criticism, but feedback. And I hope they can find ways to not take themselves too seriously, not keep everything completely focused on generating shareholder value.
I don't think you're wrong, but I feel like the world and the industry combined are all having the same problem.
That's true. I think that's fair.
I don't know that this is Nvidia specific. I
think that's fair.
Yeah.
Laughing is bad for shareholders. Yeah. Well.
But yeah, genuinely do not watch or read one review for 5000 series.
Yeah.
Do more than that. At least do two. I would honestly suggest more than that. This is going to be super weird. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what all the different reviewers do to try to find a way to communicate
the performance of this thing.
Performance differences.
Because cranking all the AI assists to the max, I can tell you that's not the answer.
Yeah.
But turning them all off,
it's also not really the answer.
That's not a real answer either. And both of those are wrong. What's right? I don't know.
Yeah.